Hello and welcome to everyone watching the Written in Melanin channel. Wherever this day may have found you, I am so glad that you are here. My name is Chelsea, better known as CM Lockhart, and I am here to bring some melanin to your pages. This is a book review video of Dread Nation, and this series, like everything related to Written in Melanin Publishing, is designed to make you guys aware of some amazing books written by Black authors that you may or may not already know about. So these are my honest opinions. Feel free to take them with a grain of salt. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any new videos that come out. Alright, so let's get into this. The summary from the back of the book reads, Jane McKeene was born 2 days before the dead began to walk the battlefields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, derailing the war between the states and changing the nation forever. In this new America, however, the battle for survival is as political as it is personal, and the restless dead, it would seem, are the least of her problems. So you guys are going to have to excuse my somewhat southern voice, I guess, for reading that. This is my second time reading the book, and the first time that I read it, it was actually an audiobook, so I technically listened to it. The first time that I listened to it, though, was before I started Written in Melanin, and I really enjoyed the book, and I wanted to do a review of it. However, I wanted it to be fresh, so I went and bought a copy and I read the actual paperback version, so that makes it twice that I've actually gone through this book. So, full disclosure, this book holds a special place in my heart because I absolutely loved Jane McKeene and Katherine Deveraux. I love how clever Jane is, and I love how she fought against a system that just was not created to profit her. But this book is also special to me because this is one of the first books that got me back into reading when I was in like kind of a dark place towards the end of my teaching career. So I listened to the audiobook right before I decided that, you know what, I cannot do this teaching thing anymore. But that being said, we're not going to be talking about the horrors that was my teaching career. We are talking about Dread Nation and Jane McKeene and Katherine Deveraux. And I loved the characters and their spirit and their energy and just the entire voice of the story. The way it's written, it just really pulls you into the world from the first page. It is based in like the historical South. So when I listened to the audiobook, there was like a southern twang, if you will, to the characters' voices and the readings. So I guess that kind of got stuck in my head. But even the way that it's written and the way that Jane talks and the way that she tells the story is very unique, and I really appreciated that. All that being said, to be fair, I love the book, so this is probably going to be like a glowing review of it, but I am who I am, so let's get a little objective here. The story follows Jane McKeene as she navigates school at Miss Preston's School of Combat for Negro girls, and then follows her after she's shipped off to Kansas to what they call Summerland. And while at Miss Preston's, Jane learns how to fight zombies, and technically they're not called zombies, like they are zombies, but in the book they're called shamblers. Jane is really good at what she does, and she is second in her class only to Katherine Deveraux, which for most of the book, Jane makes a point to get on her nerves and call her Kate because Katherine hates being called Kate. And they have a very interesting relationship, but we'll get into that in a minute. Aside from learning to fight, the girls also learn how to become members of what they call proper society. This is the age of debutantes and Southern belles, and right after the end of slavery. So like that's the era that we in. So proper society is like a major concern for these girls, especially Katherine, because she wants to be a proper lady and wear all the proper, like the pretty dresses, and it's one of those things that's kind of ongoing throughout the book, which I also really appreciated because the characters had such distinct personalities. But again, I'm getting a little off topic. Let me stay with linear thoughts so you guys can follow me. So this book takes place in an altered timeline of U.S. history right after the Battle of Gettysburg. And I am not a history nerd. I'm not a history buff. I am not the person to ask about history matters or probably science either. Those were not my strongest subjects. However, to understand the premise of this book in the era that it's based in, you do need to have a basic understanding of the Civil War, or, before it was called the Civil War, the war between the states. If you live in the United States, I really hope and pray that you know what that war was about. But in case you are not familiar with the Civil War in America, the short version of the story is the northern states wanted to abolish slavery and the southern states did not, because that's basically how they made all of their money. And basically tensions kept rising until the southern states receded from the Union, and it was one of the only wars to be fought on American soil. But thank God the northern states won, slavery was abolished, and we continue on to today. But I am not getting into a rant about history and the Civil War and all that. If you want to know, go look it up yourself. It's kind of a big thing, easy to find on the internet. But for this video, we are talking specifically about Dread Nation and how the Civil War, or the war between the states, affected Jane McKeene. And the war in her version of history comes to an end, not because of what actually happened, like I'm not even gonna get into that, but basically the dead started to rise up, which again they call shamblers in the book, and they started eating people, because that's what they do. And so the northern states and the southern states were like, hey, let's deal with this first, and that's what that was all about. So now that you kind of have a basic understanding of what the book is about, let's get into this. Things that I absolutely loved about the book. And I could probably rant about this all day, so I'm going to try to keep it short for you guys. The number one point that I loved most are the characters. First, there's Jane herself. I love her. I love her so much. She's such a good protagonist. And the reason I say that is because she is unique in that she is very self-aware of the trouble that she gets herself into. She is one of those characters who she's mischievous, and she has always gotten into trouble, and so she knows who she is, and she knows that she's not one of those people who's just going to fall in line and do what other people tell her to do just for the sake of doing it. And I feel like having her as the protagonist makes it so much better, because so often you get these books where the characters are just good for the sake of being good, and to know me is to know that I really don't like characters who are written like that. I like my characters to have some type of motivation, and while I realize that having a really sad childhood or really bad childhood or traumatic childhood of some sort is a very real factor into characters having issues, I also like it when it's not necessarily the only reason that characters have issues. Like, there is a lot more that can happen in your life than just one traumatic childhood moment, and this book shows that, because what Jane does and the things that she gets into, that's just her personality. She's naturally curious. She just naturally gets herself into trouble, and that's just who she is, and I can appreciate that. And on top of that, she also has, other traits. Like, she's also very clever. She's also very smart. She's very reliable. She is also a liar, and she acknowledges that, and she embraces all of that. She also has a very short temper and a jealous streak, especially when it comes to her classmate, Katherine Deveraux. There are so many aspects to her, and they're just written into her character without it being a huge deal. It's just who she is, and I really appreciate that. She is the type of character where once you finish the book, you are 100% going to remember Jane McKeene. That is just the type of character that she is. Following that, though, I think all of the characters in this book are great. So I love Jackson, her, technically not her boyfriend, but they used to have a thing, and I love it. Like, he is light-skinned with pretty eyes, and you know, him and Jane used to have a thing and he's still flirting with her, and, you know, when things start to go left, he approaches her first, and that kind of shows what type of relationship they have. And you get a lot of interactions from them that show that, you know, they are far from being strangers with each other, and I really like that. I guess second to Jane is Katherine. And I love Katherine so much because Katherine is trying so hard. She's the exact opposite of Jane. She's just trying so hard to fit herself into this mold that's been given to her, because Katherine is a really, really light-skinned girl, and she can pass as white. She's described as being really, 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 really pretty. And so pretty that Jane, that jealous streak that I mentioned before, it comes because Kate is so pretty and everybody acknowledges that. But Kate is really just trying to, like I said, fit herself into this box that has been given her. She is a black girl. She knows that she's a black girl. She just wants to be a black girl. She just wants to graduate school, get a job as an attendant, and be left alone, you know? And she gets caught up with Jane, and things go far left. And so when Jane gets shipped off to Summerland, Kate and Jackson are right there with her, and Kate is just like, how did I get myself into this? So I really like that. And I like the plot, obviously, because there's more to a book than the characters. So point number 2, aside from the characters, I really loved the plot. I thought it was great. I loved how many facets to it there were. There's Jane and Katherine at school. There is, you know, Jackson and what's going on with his sister. And there is the political element of it because, like I mentioned earlier, the war between the states never actually was resolved in this timeline. It just came to an end because they had a bigger issue to deal with. And so you have all these different moving parts, but they fit together so seamlessly, and you see how one thing can affect another, that can escalate into situations that you couldn't have predicted. And so I really like that, oh snap, what's going to happen next? And for me, even though I had read the book already, and I knew what was going to happen, I still had that feeling of, whoa, this is getting kind of like high risk, you know? That was really well done, and I can appreciate it. So yeah, that's on this list. Also, things that I loved part 2 of the book. So the book itself, there's part 1, which is Miss Preston's, the girls, Jane and Kate at Miss Preston's School of Combat for Negro Girls. And then there is part 2, which is Summerland. And the Summerland part of the book is my favorite part of the book, just because I love the action. I love the high risk stakes of pretty much everything. I love all of the different aspects of it, and I feel like you really get to see Jane and Katherine at both their best and their worst because of what's happening. So I'm not going to spoil the book. I just absolutely love both of their characters in the Summerland arc. And I love the moment when I love the moments when they're actually together, because I feel like that also shows a lot of their relationship. And the last thing that I just absolutely loved in this book, I love the one-liners. I love it. I have the paperback version of this book, and I am not going to spoil it for anybody. But if you want to know what my favorite line of the book is, it is on page 436, and it's the last thing that Jane McKeene ever says to Pastor Snyder. I live for that line. I love it. It is amazing. It probably is one of the top 10 things that I love about this book. So if you want to know, go buy the book, read it, support. Yes, great, fantastic. All right, lastly, the things that I did not love about this book. And to be fair, it's not that I didn't like it, it's just that it was not meant to be liked. And that is Miss Anderson. I hate Miss Anderson. Miss Anderson is horrible. She's deplorable. And if you've ever read Harry Potter, if you've ever watched the Harry Potter books, watch the books. good Lord. If you've ever read the books, watched the movies, then you know who Dolores Umbridge is, and she is the equivalent. Miss Anderson and Dolores Umbridge probably hang out together. That's how horrible she is. I don't like her, but she's meant to be hated, so it's kind of also a thing that I love. It's so well written that you hate her. Make sense? Basically, she is a teacher who abuses her power, and she creates problems, and it's horrible, and she's a horrible person. And, you know, if she had her face eaten off by shamblers, you wouldn't be sad about it. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, honestly, you guys, I have read this book twice now, and I love it. I even made my mom, well, I didn't make her read it, but I gave it to my mom, and I was like, hey, I really love this book. Please read it. And she read it, and she loved it. And everyone that I know who has read the book that I've talked to, they have really enjoyed it. So if you haven't read it and it's not on your TBR, I highly suggest that you add it. So yeah, I think this book is amazing. I love Jane's strength and the retelling of history with zombies, the relationships, because Jane is not an overly friendly person. She's not what I would call an introvert. She's not friendly. No new friends, you know? And I love how their friendships and relationships grow from going through all that they get into together. But honestly, that's all I can say about this book without spoiling it. So to recap, the book itself is called Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. It's an altered history book about surviving in a world of undead zombies and selfish rich men with political interests. And the book is available everywhere, so feel free to grab a copy of it wherever you like to get your books from. That's it for this video. I will leave links to where you can purchase my book, Keeping Promises, as well as follow me, C.M. Lockhart, and my company, Written in Melanin Publishing, on social media. If you enjoyed this video, please tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications. There are new videos every week, and if you're not tuned into it, the Melanin Chat comes out every Tuesday at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, I hope your days are lovely and your books are interesting. Bye!